Excellent. So, like I said, thank you so much for joining us, everybody, and welcome. Today's session is free 60-minute look at how a professional mediation certification can help you resolve workplace disputes faster, strengthen your leadership toolkit, and expand your career options across the federal, private, and nonprofit sectors. I'm pleased to introduce today our presenter, Tara Taylor, Managing Director of ADR Vantage, a premier national conflict resolution firm now partnering with Graduate School USA. Tara brings over 30 years of mediation experience, has trained thousands of federal employees, and spent 2 decades running Maryland's first statewide commission on civil rights mediation program. She'll walk you through what the certification covers, how it aligns with national standard and career frameworks, and give you a hands-on taste of two core mediator skills, identifying interest and framing, that you can start using right away. Tara, the floor is yours, my friend.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Shige, for helping support our tech here. And welcome, friends. I'm so happy to have you here. Amanda really gave a great intro there. I'm just going to recap that if you're joining us, feel free to drop the name of your agency or organization into the chat, just so I have a better sense of who's there and I can tailor my comments for you. You don't have to be on screen today, so that's exciting. You just get to see me. I'm noting that I just had eye surgery recently, so if you see me like winking at you a little bit, it's just because I'm recovering. So hopefully everyone will forgive me for that, and we'll get some good information going. So if we're ready to get started, I want you to give me a thumbs up. If you don't know how to do that, click on the three dots at the bottom of your screen that say more. Yeah, there's some people who found it, and there's a little heart that says react, and it gives you thumbs up, thumbs down, a few other emojis. Awesome. I love it. I love it. Yes, everyone sees that. Terrific. Okay, so let's get started. For today, as Amanda mentioned, this is an introduction just to give you a little preview of what the full professional mediation certificate course is all about. You can ask questions in the chat at any time, but I'll also save time at the end, and we can get to them as I get to the end of the hour. So first things first, here's what we're going to do. I'd like you to use that chat again and drop a word in the chat that reflects the feeling you have about conflict in your workplace. Some word, a feeling word, that reflects how conflict feels in your current workplace, or maybe the last one you were in. Take a moment. I love the interaction. It really helps us stay focused. Oh, I see some populating. Normal. Okay, great, great, Angela. Avoided, sensitive. Oh, anxious. Yeah, Karma. Absolutely. What else? What else? What's a word that pops into your mind when you think about conflict in the workplace or conflict in your current workplace? Anything else? Yeah, numerous. Oh my goodness, absolutely. Right, Paul? Draining, distracting, time bomb. Oh, that's a good one, Charles. Stressed. Yeah, yeah. All of these are valid feelings, and you probably have a few more, right, about what it feels like to have conflict in your workplace. They're all the ones that we deal with as mediators in the room with professional workplace related conflicts. They're also all the feelings people feel about conflict in general in their lives. And so we're going to talk a little bit about navigating those feelings and understanding sort of how that applies in a workplace setting when you're becoming a professional mediator. So let's jump into our first poll. If you've never taken a poll before, you're going to see it on my slide on the screen, but then you're also going to see it populate in a moment, and Shige is going to give you an interactive poll. So take a moment and just answer your gut reaction, one choice. How prepared do you feel to handle the conflict situations that you actually face at your own workplace? How prepared do you in general feel to handle conflict situations at work? Take a moment, click on your answer. Those little bubbles are interactive. And then in a sec, Shige is going to share with us the results. I don't ask you to be on screen, but I'm going to ask you to participate. Yes, that's amazing. All right. Quite a mix here, quite a mix. So just edged out is the second one. Mostly prepared, but there's situations that still catch me off guard. Absolutely, I feel like that. Some days I feel like I'm somewhat prepared. I get by, but I'm always feeling like there's gaps. Sometimes I feel very well prepared, And a lot of times I feel unprepared, especially when it's unanticipated. So this is very normal. I would say in general, most people tell me, I feel like there's always something to learn, but I'm not quite sure what I could learn that would help me. And often between what you all said you felt earlier, anxious, drained, uncomfortable, and how prepared you feel, there's usually a gap there that shows we could all use some better skills. And learning to mediate, honestly, with our professional certificate course can close that gap between how you feel about conflict and what you can do about it. So I'm going to close out this poll and keep us going. So as we move forward, we're going to kind of go over a quick agenda here. But in general, in this next hour, I'm going to make the case that mediation may be one of the most powerful professional skills anybody can develop. And we'll show you exactly what you can do to register for the course and to get more information of it. It's a 7-day fully virtual certification course. It's accredited, and I'll give you lots more details as we go through. It isn't just a participation certificate, right? It's a professional credential that either adds to your skill set or expands your career or both. So today we're going to go over how mediation shows up across all sectors, government, nonprofit, private, and we'll talk a little bit about the benefits to you being a certified mediator. Give you a little sneak peek of some of the skills, as Amanda mentioned. We'll talk again about course details, answer questions, and I'll give you a preview of some of our other mediation and conflict resolution courses in case you're not quite ready for the mediation course, but you're really interested in this topic of dispute resolution. All right, hopefully that sounds good. If you're just joining us, feel free to drop the name of your agency or organization into the chat. You haven't missed a whole lot, and we're going to keep moving. All right, so as we head past our agenda here, I wanted to just give you a little overview about, grounding us in why mediation, why dispute resolution even matters right now, and particularly in our workplaces. I like showing some of the statistics because I think it really brings it home how meaningful this is. If you didn't know, roughly 40% of a manager's time is spent dealing with conflict, either their own conflict with another colleague or an employee that they supervise, or among teams that they have to work with, or in an intact team that's having trouble, amongst themselves. So it's a lot of time, right? And most of the managers, nearly half, feel that they're unprepared to handle conflict in the way that they think they could best handle it, right? They think they could handle it faster, better, more effectively. Meanwhile, right, over a third of employees now report dealing with conflict often or very often. It's up from the numbers we've been tracking since about 10 years ago. So roughly 25% increase since 2008 that conflict is rising. And then lastly, about 67% of employees, 2/3 roughly, tell us and tell researchers that they take extra measures just to avoid coworkers that they disagree with, that they have conflict with, or that they have disputes with on the regular. They might reroute how they're walking through the hallways if they're in person. They might skip meetings, have their camera off in virtual settings, cancel one-on-ones, right? They're doing all of these avoiding things to avoid the conflict itself. And that in and of itself takes time and energy, right? Dodging, interacting with those who you have conflict of. So again, I'm going to ask you, give me a thumbs up with your react button if this feels anywhere similar to some of the things that you've experienced in the workplace. Do you spend extra time on it? Do you feel like people avoid each other sometimes? Do you see conflicts rising? Yeah, I see the thumbs. And as a long-term professional mediator, I'll tell you, there's never a shortage for workplace conflicts. So I see it as well. All right, let's keep moving. So I'm going to do another quick poll, right? In your organization, where do conflicts most often show up? And I'm going to let you select as many of these as possible, but take a moment and tell me, click off the choices. Where do you see conflicts come up? Supervisor to employee, HR complaints, team or coworker conflicts. Maybe it's all of the above. Take a moment, select as many as you'd like. And then we're going to share the results in just a moment. Yep. Okay. And here we go. Oh, yeah. So interestingly, nobody said all of the above, which is maybe a good thing, but a lot of you voted on all the other categories. And these are exactly the types of conflicts that are in the workplace and that mediators get really good at facilitating and mediating disputes around. Leadership or cross-department issues, EEO or discrimination complaints, or hopefully preventing a conflict from becoming an EEO or a discrimination complaint or a formal grievance, right? Supervisor and employee tensions, all of these play out at some point over our careers, whether you're aware of it or not. Where I really notice it is that when it's not dealt with effectively in an individual setting, it really starts to impact the teams around it, the whole organization, because things aren't being resolved at the lowest level possible to avoid the escalation. So I'm going to close that poll, keep us moving a little bit. Let me just quickly tell you that if you happen to be a federal employee, which it looks like most of you are in the chat, you know that finding ways to effectively deal with conflict is really relevant in the federal sector. That's why for the federal workforce, because the Administrative Dispute Resolution Act of 1996, ADRA, was created, because that was created, it gave the government a framework across the entire government so that there was support for using alternative dispute resolution, ADR. The ADRA authorizes federal agencies to use alternative dispute resolution, including mediation, facilitation, arbitration, instead of litigation. It requires agencies to specifically adopt policies that designate specialists within the organizations to handle ADR and to do training. And it requires the designation of particular people on staff to do that. And it also encourages the review of contracts, processes, procedures that include ADR options. So again, all these things have been in place since 1996. Different agencies commit to it differently, but we have been using mediation in particular in the federal sector for a very long time. Many agencies have their own internal mediators, right? People who are trained, who do collateral duty or who serve as full-time mediators, or agencies can contract with professional certified mediators or mediation organizations. The company I work for, ADR Vantage, is one of those organizations that provides certified mediators regularly. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm also going to talk about how that applies in workplace settings if you want to become somebody who's an employee, who can do these mediations for your agency. While workplace is outside the federal sector too, just for those of you who might be not in the federal sector, they all followed suit after the ADRA was in place. So 1996 happens, right? Early 2000s, federal government's getting better at this. And then really the private sector and nonprofit took off and said, hey, this is working. We ought to invest in some kind of dispute resolution systems as well. I've been talking a lot about mediation. Let me just stop for a second and kind of tell you the way that we define mediation at ADR Vantage and make sure that we're just sort of all on the same page. So mediation, just really simply defined, is a structured, voluntary conversation that's guided by a neutral third party, a mediator, who helps people in conflict find their own resolution. Pretty simple, right? So a neutral third party comes in, gives kind of a structure to a conversation, and the parties who are in dispute are the ones that ultimately reach resolution. There's no judge, there's no official ruling. The mediator doesn't give their opinions, right? The parties really own the solution or the resolution to their dispute. The federal sector is required to promote ADR, but there's lots of reasons why mediation is used or encouraged beyond just being required. So I thought I'd just quickly share those with you. We know that organizations with really strong mediation programs, whether they have internal mediators or they're bringing in contract mediators, they have a couple things going for them. They have fewer formal EEO complaints because, again, I said earlier, if you can resolve things at that lowest level, then typically you stop it from escalating into something bigger like a formal EEO complaint. There's shorter time to resolution, right? When you use mediation, the resolution comes faster. People aren't spending their time, energy, and resources on the conflict, right? Everybody benefits in that scenario. There are lower litigation costs and administrative costs for processing formal grievances or complaints. And lastly, there's higher morale and retention of employees, especially when employees have to continue to work together. Mediation can really help repair and reset the relationship going forward, right? So it's not only a benefit to resolve that immediate conflict, it really starts to lay the groundwork for people to have better working relationships should another conflict surface. And we all kind of know that with recent layoffs, shutdowns, reorganizations, mission changes, right? All this is going on nowadays. This is really the moment where skill differentiation matters most for you and for others like you. And a mediation certificate can really set you apart, right? The benefits are enormous. Let's talk a little bit about the landscape of the workplace, right? Because I'm focusing this on workplace disputes. However, the skills you get in a certification class really apply in any conflict in any setting. So workplace conflict has always been around, right? But there's a steep rise in that right now. I think the political environment across the globe, I think shifting demographics in the workplace, the hybrid versus in-person versus remote workplace, AI, all of that is causing more conflict and a greater demand for mediation. At the same time, mediation capacity is in trouble, right? So the conflicts are surging, but the capacity to resolve those conflicts is declining because there aren't as many qualified and certified ADR professionals, right? So somebody's got to fill that gap. Hint, hint, you all, hopefully, and that's why you're here. And certified professionals who can serve their organizations either as in-house mediators for their own agency or company or as an external mediator serving on a roster is more critical than ever, right? All organizations want more people who handle conflict well and who can resolve disputes at their lowest level, especially if you're a leader in any capacity, right? That is a finite skill that really can put you above everyone else. So I'm hoping this is good fit for everybody. I'm going to keep kind of talking us through some details, and then I'll give you the details around the course itself. If you're wondering where mediation is being used, I've mentioned a few, but I thought I would share a few examples of the types of organizations that already use mediation across sectors and industries. And in particular, ADR Vantage has been around for 32 years now, and we've been doing a lot of mediation. So I'll share some of the highlights with you. So we do quite a bit in the federal sector, as I mentioned. One example I always like to share with folks is we've had a longstanding contract with TSA, the Transportation Security Administration. And not only do we mediate workplace disputes for them, we have trained their in-house mediators, and we continue to. We also train staff that aren't necessarily mediators, but who can serve in a mediation capacity, either with their team or with other employees within TSA. And we've also created a peer mediation model, right, where we train in-house practitioners, then they train others, right? So a train the trainer model. A lot happens like that. When you have trained mediators inside your own organization who know the culture, who know your agency's mission, who know your colleagues, right? Resolution happens faster, more naturally. So we really work to build in-house capacity. Another sector that we serve is the private sector. So for example, we've had a longstanding contract with the U.S. Postal Service. They use mediation for a variety of workplace and interpersonal disputes, employee complaints and grievances. That one in particular, I love to kind of tout because over 93% of participants rate the effectiveness of the mediation process as excellent or very good, regardless of whether they got a complaint. Whether they got a resolution, right? So the process that itself feels really good to the participants, even if ultimately they don't get to a final resolution in that one session. And then aside from government and the private sector, let me flip back. We also support a lot of membership-based organizations, right? Nonprofits, trade organizations, the agreements that are reached between leaders or managers in those organizations really significantly impact the way teams work together, the way they interact with volunteers and members and boards. So I think that's just a smattering of the types of clients we have. So if you're thinking, hey, I could be a mediator for my agency, or I could be a mediator for another agency, or you could serve on a roster for an agency or an organization or a court system, right? And utilize your services that way. It's a really broad skill set. So again, I'm going to use that thumbs up emoji, right? Give me a thumbs up if you know of any organizations, yours or others, that you think could benefit from having trained internal mediators who know the organization, who could help resolve disputes. Absolutely. Oh, yeah, look at all the thumbs. All right. I love it. I love it. I agree. I agree. So, what does it actually take to become a resource? Yeah, Jeanette, I need one too. I know a lot of people are saying I need a mediator now. And certainly, if you have questions at the end, I can stay on and answer those to help. But let's talk about what it actually takes to become a resource in your own organization and build a skill set that you either use there or in another mediation program, right? So the certificate course is something I want to review with you all. I also am going to have Shige or Amanda drop a handout into the chat. I want you to download it and save it because it's going to give you lots of information, everything we're covering here today, but also more, and you can walk away and use that. And if you're interested in taking the course, it might be a document you want to share with your supervisor or your training coordinator to get some buy-in to get you to the course. All right. So I mentioned, right, that this is not just a participation course, it is a professional certification. You are going to get a certificate, a badge, and some professional development credits, which I'll talk about in a moment, all coming from our partnership between ADR Vantage and Graduate School USA. Graduate School is a member of it's accredited by the Accrediting Council for Continuing Education and Training. They also offer their own CEUs, so you'll get a beautiful way to show that you have gone through this training and you've gone through the professional development that deserves a certificate. Let's talk details, nitty gritty, right? You're going to get that handout in a moment. And Patrick, I'll come over to your thoughts in just a moment. But let me just give this overview. So I mentioned this is a course that offers you 4.2 continuing education units that are awarded by Graduate School USA. We are also a certifier, a recertification provider through SHRM, the Society for Human Resources Management, and you'll get 42 professional development units, PDUs, which is almost all of the units you need for the year as a SHRM member. So you're going to get both of those if you go through the course. It's all live and it's all virtual. No travel costs, no drive times, none of that. It's held 7 days, split over 2 weeks. And the classes run 9 to 4:30 East Coast time, right? In addition, we kind of split it up because we want you to have a couple of days 1 week, kind of long weekend in between. Maybe you want to catch up on work, and then you come back for the last 3 days. So these are just the cohorts that are coming up this fall. There's one in September, Tuesday through Friday, and Tuesday through Thursday. And then the one in November is Monday through Thursday, and then Monday through Thursday the next week, or Monday, Tuesday, Thursday the next week. Actually, I think it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. Forgive that. I think that's a little misspelling there. But again, split over 2 weeks, 7 days only. So you get this certification in less than 2 weeks. Then I love this part about it, right? We limit the class size. I have taught mediation for years and years with a lot of really good mediators and professionals. And we know that when you keep the small size, you give people a lot of opportunity for practice, for real simulations of cases that complaints that we've had and cases and real disputes. And you get in the moment coaching from not only the trainers, but professional mediation role play coaches. So you're always getting feedback all through the course to help you improve, tweak, learn, observe others. I think that's a great benefit, right? And then lastly, the tuition for this is $34.99 right now. And that is an amazing deal. I know it's a sticker shock for some, but it's also a pretty amazing deal to think you can get this kind of certification in what it would likely cost you to travel back and forth to a conference. If you think about going to a conference and registering, traveling, hotel, per diem, right? You're going to get this professional certification that benefits you, your organization, and it's done within 2 weeks. For those of you who are federal employees, we also have a lot of information on the SF 182 funding opportunity. It's a lot easier than you think. Amanda, if you hear me, I'm going to ask you to please drop in both the handout and the link to the SF 182 information from Graduate School's website. So it's coming your way. Keep an eye on the chat. All right. And then I'm going to take a moment to Patrick's comment. The challenges we have at our organization is that mediation is only part of an EEO process. And by that point, the conflict has gone too far. Yeah, that is a trouble spot sometimes. In addition, recent executive orders have eliminated groups where mediators have worked. Yeah, in a recent conflict, they did not get back to me for 2 weeks. Yeah, so absolutely. So one of the things, Patrick, and I think this is true for everyone, is, as I mentioned, conflicts on the rise. The support systems are kind of lacking, right? There's not enough people. They wait too long to get into the process. So I think part of you going through a certificate course is also that you can advocate for your organization to build in other ADR systems. My company actually builds those for many agencies so that they can see where the benefit would come even for non-EEO disputes. You can also use your skills to mediate for the agencies that do have ADR and mediation available prior to it becoming a formal charge. So you're right, there's a lot of room for growth, but there's also a lot of opportunities to take this mediation certificate and use it to your advantage, right? Thank you, Amanda. So take a peek in the chat, make sure you download that handout, giving you all the details. And if you're a federal employee and you want to find out about the SF 182, then check that out. The other option is some people will self-pay. Some people will share the cost of the course with their agency. So maybe they pay half and you pay half. Also, it can be split over fiscal years. So we're coming to the end, we're in the last quarter of the fiscal year. So maybe you want to pay some ahead and pay some in the new fiscal year. All of that can be worked out, right? So we're also going to put into the chat the information for support at graduateschool.edu. You can ask any questions about funding, registration, that kind of thing, and I'll mention that again. But the website is support at, the email, I'm sorry, is support at graduateschool.edu. And they can answer questions for you. So I'm going to keep moving. I will come back to that slide, I promise, right, in case you have any questions. And let's just quickly talk about this professional credential, right? So most mediation programs across the country require a minimum of 40 hours of in-class training in order to be certified, in order to meet the qualifications for a lot of the mediation rosters. So if you get this credential through us in Graduate School USA, you're going to meet the 40-hour minimum training requirement for mediators in most state court programs, in most local court jurisdiction programs that utilize mediators. Some of those are volunteer programs and some of them are paid. Also, by going through our course, it qualifies you under the ADRA, the Administrative Dispute Resolution Act, to serve on your agency's internal mediation roster if you have one, or for another agency. And our credential is also recognized by two of the huge kind of governing national associations, the ACR, Association for Conflict Resolution, and the National Association of Certified Mediators. So you're getting all the recognized professional credentials to really make this worth your while. Also, I want to mention that beyond just getting those CEUs, right? We sort of give you huge benefits in the continuing education arena. So if you're somebody who has to have continuing education every year for your professional development, or there's professional development dollars allotted for you, this is the place where you might want to use that, especially for HR or any kind of people-centric roles, managers, leaders, counselors, legal departments. Mediation gives you a practical toolkit to prevent formal complaints, to, be aware when there's legal exposure, and really to minimize the risks to the organization. Also, right, as a leader, you're going to use this every day in the hallway, in the office, with your teams and with people you supervise. So not only does it give you, the professional credential, it also gives you kind of the day-to-day skills that you need. So if you've just joined us, hopefully we had a few extra people come in. Make sure that you drop the name of your organization into the chat or your agency. I'm going to keep moving and just talk a little bit about those of you who are in the federal sector, because you might be wondering, hey, how does this apply for anybody who's kind of in the upper echelons of service in the federal government? So we always make sure that our trainings also touch on the federal senior executive ECQs, right? This might not apply to all of you, but for those of you who might be on the federal senior executive path, or maybe you're developing people who are going to be on that path, mediation certification doesn't just touch one of the ECQs, it speaks to all 5 of them, right? I'm not going to go over this, but it is in the handout. So if you haven't already downloaded that handout, make sure that you do, because that's a really great thing to also go to your supervisor with and say, hey, this is valuable because it helps align with the ECQs that I'm trying to meet, right? So keep that in mind. Also, let's just quickly cover the skills, and I'm going to teach you 1 or 2 of them in a second, but these are the skills that come with this mediation course. We talk about managing high emotions, right? That can be helpful for anybody dealing with people in any way, right? Family, friends, workplace. We're going to teach you better ways to ask powerful questions. Also, how do you reframe negative things that are blame-based and start to help people move forward to seeing them in a more future-focused way? We'll talk about impasse strategies. When you really feel stuck in a dispute, what are some things you can do to get past the impasse? We're going to talk about negotiation and how do you move negotiations forward, right? Because often that's what's happening with people in dispute, is they're negotiating across their interests. We'll talk about mediating EEO disputes in particular and grievances. That requires extra training if you really, really want to get good at it, but we will give you a high level exposure to that so that you understand what's needed for mediators to mediate those type of disputes. We will teach you co-mediation techniques. Some programs use solo mediation, others use co-mediation. So we'll give you exposure to both. And we're going to go over the model standards of conduct with it, which are the ethical guidelines that apply to all mediators. So you'll make sure that you know those and that you're operating ethically in any program that you mediate for. Lots and lots of skills, right? All right, give me a thumbs up again if you're staying with me, if you're still awake, if you're listening and starting to get engaged in all this. Yes, yes, yes. All right, I want to see that. I'm not making you come on camera, so I want you to be engaged with it, right? Okay, so let's move on, knowing that if you took this, you would be kind of the go-to person, right, to hopefully help with disputes in your agency, but you're also kind of going to build your own resume for maybe wherever you want to take your career next, right? And you're going to use these skills every day when you go home with your kids, when you talk to your friends, when you're in a community group, right? These are skills you can apply. So I want to give you a quick taste of the certificate course in action, right? But informally, as I mentioned, I think these are amazing things to kind of tuck away for yourself to know would be outcomes of taking this course, right? You're going to build credibility. You're going to be the person that people start to look to for a deeper knowledge on conflict. You can, in real time, help people in just regular conversations turn their unproductive language into more constructive dialogue. This is helpful if you're facilitating meetings, if you're guiding teams. You're going to ask better questions, right? Because you're going to be able to uncover and surface what people really need, right? What they're most interested in, even if they're coming in with a really rigid position. And you're going to also expand the trust people have in you, hopefully because you'll be able to be better at stabilizing situations that could turn into bigger conflicts before they do. All right, so I'm going to teach you quick 2 skills. You would get way more into this in the course, but I wanted to give you a little taste of it. So 2 of the skills we're going to work on are identifying interests and reframing. We're going to start with the first one, identifying interests, right? So let me quickly tell you what I mean by interest. At the heart of virtually every workplace conflict is a gap between what people say they want, their position, and what they actually need, their underlying interest. A position is usually something really rigid and it's stated as a demand. I want a raise. I deserve a raise. Whereas an interest is kind of the underlying need or concern or the things they value that are driving them to make that demand, right? So I want a raise, I should get a raise is usually driven by wanting to be acknowledged for your work, being valued for your expertise, right? And the effort you put into it. So the difference between a position and an interest, they're almost the same thing. But if you can move people from their position to highlighting the deeper interest, right? That's a mediator tactic that really is what is at the core of resolving disputes. It takes practice, it's nuanced, but it's the magic that happens in the room. So again, I do this much more interactively in the course, right? But I'm going to give you a brief scenario and then a poll, and you're going to help decide which ones of these are the positions and which ones are the interests. All right. So here we go. I'm going to put it on the board. Shige, I'm going to ask you to just hold on a moment before you populate the poll. Let's read. And actually, you know what? Let me go back just a second. Shige, hold on to that poll for me for just a second. Let me give you this scenario before you look at the poll. Here's the situation, right? I'm going to go back to this. Let's just stay here. Here's the situation. Taylor and Jordan, two employees, are both on a project team and have had some recent disagreements. They agree to go to mediation, and during the mediation, Taylor says, I need Jordan off this project. Every time I bring something to the team, Jordan shoots it down and undermines my credibility in front of the team. I can't work with him. All right. So they're on the same project team. They've been having these disagreements. They're in mediation. And Taylor is the one who's saying, I need Jordan off this project. All right. Shige, thank you. If you would populate it again. So at the top is what Taylor says. I want you to think, what's Taylor's interest? And select everything that you think applies. Everything that you think applies. Take a moment. If you haven't participated in a poll yet, try it. It's fun. Choose as many as you'd like. Do it quickly, and then we'll share the results. Yep. Keep at it. All right. Look at that. Nice spread. Thank you for participating. So with a resounding success, you all avoided the last option, right? To be removed from the project because, and I know you're saying it in your head, that's Taylor's position, right? That's the rigid demand that they're coming in the room with. All of the other things are arguably Taylor's interests to be heard and respected, especially in a group setting, to feel that their contributions are taken seriously, to have a functional working relationship, and to protect their own credibility in a professional setting. So yay, all of you, you did amazing, right? Where it gets really tough is when they say more than one sentence, right? It's easy to do it, or easier when they just say one or two sentences. When somebody talks for, 15 minutes solid, and you as a mediator have to really filter through what's that underlying interest? What are they saying is most important? That's what takes the practice and the work. So I love that you're all on the right path. Kudos. Let's move on to our second skill really fast, reframing, right? So this is another big skill that takes a lot of practice, but reframing takes a negative, accusatory, or even emotionally charged statement and restates it in a more neutral, interest-based way, right? Using interest-based language. So it kind of shifts from blame to what the person actually needs and what's most important to them going forward, right? I think there's an art to learning to reframe, right? And shift a person from negativity and blame to their interest and their request for the future. So I'm going to give you an example and then we'll practice it one time. So I'm going to read you an example first, and then I'll tell you how you might sound if you were reframing that. So somebody says, my supervisor never gives me credit for anything I do. I work twice as hard as everyone else, and it's like I'm invisible. Now, if I'm the mediator and I restate it, it might sound something like this. It sounds like recognition for your contributions is really important to you, and you're hoping your supervisor starts to become aware of it, right? Super simple, same message, no judgment, right? And it's opening the door rather than closing it, right? If I had just said, sounds like you're really mad at your supervisor, right? That's not going to open the door for us moving forward. So let's go back to that same scenario with Jordan and Taylor, right? Assuming that the mediation continues on. So Jordan says back, Taylor is loud during meetings. He's completely inconsiderate and has no respect for anyone. If you're the mediator, which response do you think, making the best reframe? Just choose one. What's the best reframe option? Keep participating. There's only one poll after this. Take a moment. All right. Hopefully most of you have had a chance to answer. Give it another 10, 15 seconds. Which one's the best? All right. Thank you for participating. Okay. So it looks like fewer of you participated overall. So that makes me sad, but you'll have another opportunity. But most of you voted for B, right? Sounds like you're requesting that Taylor try to keep his voice level down during meetings. Good job, right? Of all of them, B is really the best aligned reframe, right? It takes the blaming and the emotionally charged statement and kind of reflects back the underlying request, right? In kind of neutral language. And I kind of gave you a gimme because it said request in there, right? So that's often the way that you can tell. That one skill can completely change the trajectory of a mediation or even a conversation that hasn't turned into a formal mediation, right? When emotions are high, people often can only hear the blame. So a mediator, right, coming in as a neutral kind of cuts through that. And that's the stuff we practice again and again and again and again through the mediation course with more than one sentence, right? Bigger and bigger, bigger to help people make that shift. So let me quickly go through the other responses though, because I value that. If you selected A, right, you feel Taylor is inconsiderate and doesn't respect you or others. I understand maybe why you went there, but it kind of labels the other person as inconsiderate or disrespectful when that may or may not be the case. So you want to make sure as a mediator you're not reinforcing that. If you selected C, you blame Taylor for what's happening between the two of you. That might be true, but it reinforces that blame-based language and the past rather than kind of like what's the request for the future. And then if you selected D, which I don't know if any of you did, I can't remember, is it realistic to think you'll have quiet during meetings? That might be a fair question that's happening in your head, but when you ask it that way, it's usually heard as a leading question or as you making judgment for people getting into the situation in the first place, right? And then you kind of lose your neutrality. So nice job on this. If you didn't select B as the right one, that's okay. That means we all have stuff to learn, and that's why we're here. So thank you for being part of that. That scenario, workplace friction between two coworkers, is one of dozens that you'll practice in the course because we want you to navigate through a lot of different types of disputes. So I'm going to ask us to do one more poll, last one, promise. So far, based on what you know, what would make it easier for you to enroll in the professional mediation certificate course? Maybe it's your supervisor's approval. Maybe it's your training budget. Maybe it's just getting more information about the schedule. Maybe you just don't even know because you haven't checked the dates yet. Or maybe you're ready to sign up. Choose one real quickly. That'll help me Anybody who hasn't participated, I encourage you to do so. All right. So the top two, very, very common, right? So I'll start with the first one. If you are wondering if your supervisor or your leadership is going to approve you being able to do that, remember, we can help at graduate school and at ADR Vantage with that. We have materials. I encourage you to download that handout, right? And Amanda, if you'll drop it in there one more time, just in case anybody popped on and popped back off. That gives you a lot of good information about what's the ROI, what's the return on investment for having you participate in this course, right? And it's a great way for you to set up yourself for success in getting a yes to this. We're also happy to speak to your leadership and tell them how we've used this effectively, tell them about where we've seen return on investment for other employees who have done this. So anything that we can help, we'll support. You can email me directly and I'll share that at the end. You can also ask graduate school for support. If you selected the training budget, right? I get that, right? It's tough times. It's one of the most common barriers. But again, if your organization can't afford it, you can think about splitting it over fiscal years. You can think about splitting it over departments. You can look about whether they fund professional development in a different way that they fund training. If you think there's enough people in your organization who would want to do that, we can offer you group discount rates. Absolutely, that's something we can talk about. Please let us know. And if you're a federal employee, that SF 182 process is really smoother and simpler than you think. So please check the link that we put into the chat and you can get some more information. So anything we can do to help support you in your options, we're here to do. Now, I want to put up for you one last time the details, and then I'm just going to ask if people have questions, right? So remember, you get the professional development units for SHRM, you get the continuing education units from graduate school, 7 days over 2 weeks, totally virtual, no transportation, no mileage, no drive time, right? Roughly 9 a.m. to 4:30 each of the days. The days are split up over the 2 weeks. You've got a September one with a few slots left, not many. November, and then we'll be running several cohorts in 2027. Classes are small, right? That's why we cap them. You can bring more than you, right? You might have a few people from your organization, and the tuition is there, and we'll work with you in any way that we can. So let's pause. I'm going to share some other conflict resolution courses with you in a minute before we kind of get to the end, but let me answer any questions that you might have. Feel free to put it in the chat, and I'll also bring up some questions that others have asked me in case it's helpful. Who's got a question or a comment that I can spend a moment on? Anybody with a question? Thoughts? Yeah, so this question, thank you, Sandy. Can you come to the facility to do a group class? Yes, we can come to the facility and do a group class. It just needs to be a certain number of people. So if you want to contact me at ADR Vantage, I'm going to give you the website in a second. And I'll put it here in the chat as well. We can talk about that. And most of our courses are in the DC metro area, and we'll work through, what details we can do for that. Work Better at ADR Vantage is our main mailbox, and we can get you more information. Good question. Anybody else with a question? So I know one of the things that I gotten asked in other webinars on this is, do I have to have conflict resolution experience, or do I have to have legal experience? You don't have to have any of that to become a really good mediator. I think the best mediators are people who are curious, people who want to learn a new skill, and people who have the ability to listen well. So all of those things get developed stronger and stronger, but you don't have to come from any particular background to get your mediation certificate. Also, I think the nice layout for this, people have asked, is that it gives you a little break in between. So you do, 3 or 4 days of training, you have a break, right? You get a mental break over the weekend, but you also get a break to check your emails and maybe work a day. And then you come back in after things have kind of settled and you have more questions and more learning, right? So it really is meant to be iterative in the way you learn, but also we bring in a lot of different role play coaches because then you can kind of see real professional experienced mediators and get advice from them as you navigate through the course. I don't see every course. I certainly didn't have that when I took it 30 plus years ago, but having those people in real time give you feedback is amazing. If you have other questions, absolutely, I want you to ask them, put them in the chat. But I do want to just quickly share with you that if you aren't able to do the full course or not able to do it yet, there are, if I can hop back, some other mediation and conflict resolution related courses. More is coming, but these I think are good foundation courses. There is a 1-day course called Manager as Mediator, and it basically helps leaders, supervisors, managers kind of take the skills you would learn in a mediation course, compresses them into 1 day, and we use a model called shift, which is something you can apply again and again when you're in a situation where you need to kind of you have a vested interest, but you want the parties to be empowered, your employees to be empowered to get to their own resolution. It's a really good course. Mediators teach it. And so I think that would be a great option. We run a 1-day course on using AI to prepare for difficult conversations. This is not doing the conversation for you. It's using AI as a thought partner to help you prepare for what it might be a very important conversation or one that you're struggling with your approach. I co-teach that one. It's great. It really has helped me. There's a 2-day course on the art of productive disagreement. This is really like practical tools to get you better outcomes day to day. You don't have to be a manager or leader. I think this is for people who work with people, right? And it's a nice way to get some skills built in, some takeaways you can apply right away. There's also a 4-day course specifically for people who facilitate, people who lead work groups or task forces or ad hoc committees, right? This is based on a federal certification in particular to help you lead a work group of any kind more effectively. And that's that one comes with a certification as well. So lastly, I'm going to put up here again my contact information, work better at ADR Vantage. If you want to enroll or you want to find out more about any of those courses or get the dates that are coming up, you can go to graduateschool.edu. And if you search under the topics bar, you'll see mediation and conflict resolution training. Graduate School also has a million other courses and lots there. But in particular, if you're looking for dispute resolution and mediation, you'll see our courses and you'll see all the new courses coming up soon. I want to make one last plug on Wednesday, no, on Thursday this week, 2 days from now, Thursday, we're also doing another free 1-hour webinar. And that one is on introducing you to the course using AI to prepare for difficult conversations. So if you don't love AI, you're skeptical of it, you haven't maybe played around with it in a meaningful way, feel free to join myself and my colleague Brian Sims. We're going to be leading that 1-hour webinar to give you a teaser for the 1-day course. So that's our last webinar of the season on Thursday. If you have any questions about the Professional Mediation Certificate course, I'm here. Don't forget to download the handout. I'll stay for any questions, and I appreciate you being here, my friends. I hope to see some or all of you becoming mediators soon. Take care.